I have a conviction that everyone is a leader. So for those of you that are new to the podcast, welcome to the Jeff Kapusta podcast. I am a pastor and a leader of a church in coastal North Carolina. I've got a team of about 30 staff members, a couple thousand folks that call the church home. And I'm in a position that I never thought I would be. And chances are you are as well. You're leading a business, you're leading a classroom, you're leading a home. And if nothing else, you are leading yourself. And today I want to talk leadership. Many years ago, I was taking my son to a conference that I was speaking at up in Maryland, and we were looking to buy tickets, and so we found a flight on Spirit Airlines. And I don't know if you've ever had the privilege of flying Spirit Airlines, but it is an experience. And so as this progressed on, I took my phone out and I started recording notes that became what I want to share with you today, lessons learned from Spirit Air. So this was the very first time that my son had ever flown. And so I thought it would be exciting to take him along and to see his, excitement as we waited on the flight and as we boarded. And I couldn't wait for him to get his wings and to stare out the window and see the clouds. And so I was excited for this experience. And several things began to transpire that I wrote down that I want to share with you today. It's 6 lessons that I learned, and I think you can learn, and we can apply to our life, our business, our classroom, whatever avenue you lead in. Here's the very first one. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If you've ever priced out airfare, you know there's normal airfare and then there's Spirit airfare. I remember thinking it's $100 for us to fly from Myrtle Beach to Baltimore, Washington International. $100. So I jumped on really quick and I booked those flights, and I quickly learned it's not $100. And if you oversell, you will probably underdeliver. Isn't it common for us to overmarket the product that we offer? If you'll come to this, if you'll let me consult, if you will, I guarantee. Listen, rarely do people deliver on the guarantee. I think about in my leadership context, when we were going from, as a church, our first 6.5 years, we were portable, meaning that we would set up all of our equipment in a middle school or a high school gymnasium or a cafeteria, and then we'd pack it all back up. And we had the opportunity to sign a lease on a facility. It was 30,000 square feet. I remember thinking, how are we ever going to be able to afford this? This is crazy. And we stretched our faith and we challenged our church, and we had a contractor that said that he could build that out for $250,000. And I just thought, oh my word, where will we ever get that money? And we rallied our team, and we did. We began to raise that money. Well, the project was not $250,000. It was $550,000. And let me tell you, it sounded too good to be true, and it was. So the first leadership principle that I learned from Spirit Air is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. It was not a $100 flight, which leads me to principle number 2. You get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. You know what we paid for? A seat. And that is all that we got. Oh, you want a bag? $40 extra. Guess what? Your seat doesn't even recline. And so here we are paying for our tickets, now paying for our bags. And then I come to find out that there's more. Like anything that you want is going to cost a little bit extra. Here's why I think this is important. I have a belief that we're called to be good stewards of what God has entrusted to us. And sometimes the less expensive option is actually going to cost you more in the long run. You've probably heard people say there's good, fast, and cheap. You get to pick 2 of the 3. Well, let me just tell you that when you settle for cheap, you get what you pay for. One of my favorite verses says the beginning of wisdom is to get wisdom. And wisdom will tell you that you get what you pay for. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Number 2, you get what you pay for. Here's number 3. Nobody likes to be nickel and dimed. So we paid for a ticket, we got a seat. We paid for our carry-on bags. Then I realized if I wanted my son, who is a minor, to sit next to me, guess what? I got to pay extra just so that we can choose our seats. I call this a poverty mentality. There are a few things that will derail your business more than a poverty mentality. As a church, we have to always wrestle through limited resources, but you cannot have a poverty mentality. I believe that the Bible preaches an abundance mentality. I'm not saying prosperity, but I am saying abundance. And if you have a poverty mentality, you're going to carry that through the way that you execute your business, your ministry, your family. And just remember, nobody likes to be nickel and dimed. Every time I turned around, it was mo money, mo money, mo money. Hey, everyone, real quick. In some of the initial episodes, you may hear me refer to the podcast as the Jeff Kapusta Podcast or the Jeff Kapusta Leadership Podcast. After recording the first few episodes, we realized it made more sense to keep consistent with the theme of Fully Alive and the book that I recently released called Fully Alive, which you can get in the description or the show notes. I just want to make sure you knew that you're not imagining things. It was us making a change. Well, having said that, let's get back to the episode. Here's number 4. A little gesture goes a long way. So up until this point, I've been oversold. I've been nickel and dimed. And I'm already like, I'm never doing this again. That's where I'm at. We haven't even taken off yet. I have a bad experience already. And so as we get on the plane, I tell the flight attendant, I say, this is my son's first flight. Is there any way he could get his wings? And she goes, we don't do wings. I'm like, what do you mean you don't do wings? It's what airlines do. So I'm sitting there like kind of bummed and, I didn't tell him he might get wings, but I'm hoping he'll get wings. And all of a sudden I hear over the intercom, the pilot gets on and says, I want to welcome you aboard Spirit Air, yada, yada, yada. One lucky passenger is going to win a special pass. And then he lists off the aisle and seat number, and it's my son's seat. And what he had done, because they don't have wings, is he called my son's number and gave him an invite up to the cockpit for him to take a look at it. Can I tell you, in that moment, you know what happened? I overlooked every bit of the negative experience that led to this moment. Yeah, I got nickel and dimed. Yeah, I overpay. I didn't overpay, but I kept paying. But the fact that they valued my son, this little gesture went a long way. I don't know what a little gesture might look like in your business, but can I tell you, it puts personality on your business. I suddenly went from this is the worst experience ever to this is actually turning out to be pretty great. So a little gesture goes a long way. Here's number 5. Anything worth doing is worth having fun doing. Anything worth doing is worth having fun doing. So on our flight, we finally, get in the air. And let me tell you this, our pilot was great. I have flown a ton in my life. I can rarely remember the impact that the pilot had on the flight. Our pilot would come on and he would make funny comments. Like he's joking with all of us on the plane. He'll say he would say things like this: the flight will be just over an hour, so sit back, relax, and recline forward. And the reason is because the seats don't recline back. Like you have one spot. But I was like, okay, he knows that we're all trying to sit back and they won't, and he's making light of it and we're laughing. At one point he goes, we've reached our cruising altitude, which means you can unbuckle your seatbelt. However, anytime you're traveling 500 miles an hour, it's a good idea to have a seatbelt on. And he put personality on it. I loved it. The flight attendants, he said this. He said, flight attendants, prepare the cabin. We are cleared for landing, and I am still stuck on 23 across on the crossword puzzle. Can somebody help me? I was like, to me, it made it a lot of fun. We played trivia during the flight, and we would answer questions by pushing our flight attendant call button. I just say this. They made it fun. That little gesture, that fun, made for a great flight. Here's the 6th and final takeaway. The crew makes the flight. The crew makes the flight. So other than having to pay for every add-on, our flight to BWI was actually awesome. It was enjoyable. Our flight back, not the same. Why? Think about it. Why? Same type of plane, same distance flight, same price tickets, same overpriced add-ons, no wings. What was different? The flight crew was different. The pilot was different. I watched a lady who got double booked. Somehow 2 people were booked for that seat, and they wouldn't even work with her. It was almost like she was the problem. And, the attendant just kind of smirked and like that was it. Listen, when it comes to our business, we are the crew. We are the flight attendants. We can smile. We can scowl. We are the ones that make the difference. I think about my context. I lead an amazing team. I pastor a church that's in multiple locations. And quite honestly, in my line of work, I'm not doing things much different than what Spirit Air was doing. You know, we've got people I was on that plane for about an hour. I've got people for approximately an hour on a Sunday. We're taking them from one place to another. We're taking people from where they are to where we believe God wants them to be. We are the flight crew. We make the difference. I don't care if your business is pressure washing driveways or a podcast studio. It's the little things. You're the one that makes the difference. And so I would just encourage you in your leadership. Are you accurately representing the product that you offer? Are you nickel and diming people along the way? I signed up for this, and now you're charging me for that. Or are you focusing on the customer and making the decision that I'm going to make this the best hour or the best experience? And we may not have all these things, but man, we can invite them into the cockpit and we can do something special for them. Can I just say this? I'm sitting here recording this podcast right now. And the friend of mine who runs this amazing podcast studio asked me before I came in if he could have a coffee ready for me. And I was like, no, it's cool. I'm going to be at the coffee shop early. I'm going to be getting some work done. I show up to the coffee shop and the guy looks at me, the barista, and says, "Are you Jeff? Are you friends with Rich?" And I was like, yeah, he's a great friend. He pulls out a gift card and goes, "Here, he wanted to buy your coffee this morning." Things like that. It didn't take a lot. It took a little bit of thought. And I think about Spirit Air. Can they get better? Yes. And I would love to sit down with them and help them. But that crew from Myrtle Beach to BWI made up for all the little negatives because a little gesture went a long way and they made that flight fun. And my son remembers it to this day. So whatever you're leading, just know you are the crew and you make the difference.